What happens when a legend walks into a room built for laughter, and realizes he's the punchline? The studio lights hum softly overhead, casting a warm golden glow across polished wood floors and velvet curtains. The atmosphere is electric, but controlled, the kind of energy late-night television thrives on. The band has just finished its final note, a smooth jazz outro lingering in the air like perfume. The audience is already smiling, already primed. They came here to laugh. They came here to relax. They came here for something easy. They have no idea what they're about to witness. Jimmy Kimmel steps into the spotlight with his usual confidence, adjusting his jacket with a casual flick, his grin effortless, practiced, almost automatic. The crowd erupts on cue. Applause rolls through the studio like a wave hitting the shore, predictable and rhythmic. Tonight, he begins, pacing slowly across the stage. We've got a very special guest. A pause. A beat. The kind that builds anticipation. The man who made mumbling an art form. Rocky himself, the name hangs in the air for just a second longer than expected. Sylvester Stallone. The audience explodes. It's louder now. Not just polite applause, this is respect. Real respect. The kind reserved for someone whose presence alone carries history. Cameras shift quickly toward the entrance as Stallone walks out. He doesn't rush. He never does. There's a calm gravity in the way he moves, like a man who's already fought every battle worth fighting and doesn't need to prove anything anymore. He raises a hand slightly, acknowledging the crowd, his expression composed but not distant. A sharp black blazer frames his shoulders, the deep maroon shirt beneath adding a quiet intensity to his presence. He sits. Jimmy leans in. And just like that, it begins. "It's good to be here," Stallone says, his voice textured, worn, unmistakable. There's a calm in it. A steadiness. "Good to have you, Sly," Jimmy replies quickly, eyes glinting with something playful, or something sharper. "I was told you'd bring wisdom, experience, a few unintelligible syllables, and maybe a protein shake." Laughter. It lands. But not perfectly. Stallone smiles. Just enough. But his eyes don't follow. There's a flicker there, brief, almost invisible, but real. "Well," Stallone replies evenly, "I left the protein shake backstage. Didn't want to outshine your green juice." The audience laughs again. Louder this time. Jimmy tilts his head, smirking. Touché. A moment passes. The rhythm is still intact. Still safe. "So let's talk about your new movie," Jimmy continues, leaning back slightly. "Another action flick, or did you finally decide to make something with plot?" This time, the laughter comes slower. Not because it wasn't funny. Because something about it feels pointed. Stallone doesn't react immediately. He inhales subtly, his fingers resting against his knee, tapping once, twice, controlled. "It's a story about redemption," he says finally. A veteran confronting the ghosts of his past. Something that speaks to real-world pain. There's weight in his words now. But Jimmy doesn't pick it up. "Deep," Jimmy says with exaggerated awe. "And here I thought it was just another excuse to flex those biceps." A few scattered laughs. But now there's hesitation in the room. A shift. Stallone leans slightly forward, his gaze steady. "Sometimes pain needs muscle," he says quietly. Not to show off, but to carry the weight. Silence. Not complete silence, but enough. Enough for people to notice. Jimmy blinks. Just once. Then he smiles again, but it's tighter now. "Wow," he says. "That's poetic. Did Rambo teach you that, or was it Rocky?" The question hangs there. This time, Stallone leans back. And something changes. "Funny," he says. "I always thought comedy should punch up, not down. It's subtle. But it lands harder than anything before it. The audience reacts, an audible shift, a collective intake of breath. Jimmy raises his eyebrows, caught off guard for just a fraction of a second. "Just having fun," he says quickly, brushing it off. "Don't want to get body slammed on live TV." "Don't worry," Stallone replies calmly. "I only hit when it's scripted." A ripple moves through the crowd. Not laughter. Recognition. The balance is shifting. Jimmy senses it. He pivots. "Well, let's go back," he says, forcing a lighter tone. "The first Rocky film. You wrote it in 3 days, right? What happened? Did you run out of crayons?" This time. The silence is immediate. Stallone doesn't respond right away. His eyes lower for just a second, as if something older, something heavier, just surfaced. When he looks back up, his expression is calm. But not soft. "I wrote it with everything I had," he says slowly. "While sleeping in a bus terminal, trying to sell my dog just to eat." The room freezes. Completely. "So yeah," he adds quietly. "Crayons weren't really the priority." No laughter. No movement. Just stillness. Jimmy shifts in his seat, clearly not expecting that turn. Stallone leans forward now. Not aggressively. But deliberately. "You know, Jimmy," he says, voice low but clear. "Sometimes you crack jokes. Sometimes you crack dignity." A pause. "Be careful which you're breaking tonight." The words don't echo. They settle. Heavy. Unavoidable. And suddenly, this isn't an interview anymore. Jimmy leans back, forcing a smile, but there's tension in his jaw now. He's recalibrating, searching for control, for rhythm, something familiar. "You know, Sly," he says, trying again, "you should do stand-up." That comeback was almost intelligible. A few nervous laughs. Stallone doesn't blink. "And you should try sincerity sometime," he replies. "It might shock your audience." This time, the reaction is immediate. Louder. Sharper. An audible "oh" cuts through the room like a blade. Jimmy's smile falters for just a second. Just long enough for everyone to notice. The energy has changed now. Completely. What started as playful banter is turning into something else, something unpredictable. Something real. Jimmy leans forward again, eyes narrowing slightly. "Let's be honest," he says. "You've made more sequels than Hollywood has original ideas. Ever think of just letting it go?" Stallone crosses his legs slowly, unbothered on the surface. "I keep telling stories people want to hear," he says. "Maybe that's the part that bothers you." The audience reacts again. Stronger this time. They're choosing sides now. Jimmy chuckles, but it doesn't land the same. "Or maybe," he fires back, "it's that you keep playing the same guy with a new haircut." A beat. Stallone tilts his head slightly. Better than being a new haircut with the same jokes. The crowd erupts. And this time, it's not polite. It's not controlled. It's real. Jimmy's expression tightens. And for the first time, he's not leading the conversation anymore. He's reacting. The shift is complete. The studio feels different now. Warmer, but heavier. Like the air itself has thickened. Jimmy leans back slowly, eyes locked on Stallone. "Okay," he says, quieter now. "But seriously, isn't there a part of you that worries people only see you as a punchline?" Stallone doesn't hesitate. "Only when hosts like you try to write the jokes." Applause crashes through the room. Loud. Sustained. Unignorable. And somewhere between the clapping, the silence, and the tension, everyone realizes the same thing. This isn't comedy anymore. This is something else. Something sharper. Something dangerous. And as Jimmy opens his mouth to respond, the camera cuts slightly closer. The lights feel hotter. The room feels smaller. Because whatever happens next, this isn't going to stay under control. The applause fades, but the tension doesn't. It lingers in the air, thick and unmoving, like humidity before a storm. The audience settles back into their seats, but not comfortably. There's a stiffness now, a quiet awareness that something has shifted beyond entertainment. The laughter is no longer automatic. Every reaction is measured, cautious. On stage, Jimmy Kimmel adjusts his posture, subtly straightening his jacket again. It's a small movement, almost instinctive, but it reveals everything. He's recalibrating. Reclaiming control. Or at least trying to. Across from him, Sylvester Stallone sits still. Composed. Watching. Waiting. Jimmy exhales through his nose, forcing a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Well, he says, dragging the word slightly, buying himself time. Didn't expect to host a therapy session tonight. A few scattered laughs ripple through the audience. But they're weaker now. Careful. Stallone tilts his head just slightly, studying him. There's no anger in his face, just clarity. The kind that makes people uncomfortable. Sometimes truth sounds like therapy, Stallone replies quietly. Especially when you're not used to hearing it. The reaction is immediate. A low murmur spreads across the room. Not loud, but present. The audience is no longer just watching, they're feeling it. Jimmy's smile tightens. All right, he says, nodding slowly. Let's not get too heavy. People at home didn't tune in for a life lesson from Rocky Balboa. He leans forward again, tapping his cue card lightly against his palm. They tuned in for fun. There's a subtle emphasis on that last word. Stallone notices. Funny thing about fun, he says. It works best when it doesn't come at someone else's expense. That lands harder than expected. Jimmy pauses. Just a fraction too long. Then he laughs, short, controlled. Wow, you're really sticking to this tonight, huh? Stallone doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he shifts slightly in his seat, his fingers interlocking as he leans forward. His voice lowers, not in volume, but in tone. Let me ask you something, Jimmy. The shift is subtle. But powerful. The audience feels it instantly. Jimmy blinks, caught mid-smirk. Sure, he says. Shoot. Stallone's eyes don't leave his. When you make those jokes, he begins, slow and deliberate, do you ever stop and think about who you're actually talking to? Silence. Not awkward. Not empty. Heavy. Jimmy lets out a breath, leaning back again. I think I'm talking to a guy who's been in Hollywood longer than I've been alive, he replies. A guy who can handle a little teasing. A little teasing, Stallone repeats softly. Then he nods. Yeah. I can handle that. A pause. But what you're doing, he continues, voice steady, that's not teasing. That's testing. The word hits differently. Testing. Jimmy's jaw tightens ever so slightly. Testing what? He asks, his tone now sharper. Stallone leans in just a bit more. How far you can go, before respect walks out the door. The audience reacts again, this time louder, a mix of gasps and applause blending together in a chaotic wave. Jimmy raises a hand slightly, half laughing, half defensive. Whoa, okay. I think we're blowing this way out of proportion. But even as he says it, he doesn't sound convinced. Stallone sits back again, calm as ever. Then bring it back, he says simply. That's it. No anger. No volume. Just a challenge. Jimmy stares at him for a second, processing. Then he smirks again, but it's forced now. All right, he says. Let's bring it back. He flips his cue card over, glancing down for a brief moment before looking up again. So, critics, he says. They've been saying your recent films are leaning heavily on nostalgia. That without your past, there's not much left in the present. The words are smoother now. Cleaner. But sharper. Calculated. The audience quiets again. They know this isn't random. Stallone nods slowly, as if he expected it. Critics talk, he says. That's their job. A beat. I work, he adds. That's mine. Applause breaks out again, strong, confident. Jimmy presses on quickly, trying to cut through it. But don't you think there's some truth there, he insists. I mean, how many times can you revisit the same story before it becomes redundant? Stallone's eyes narrow slightly. Not in anger. In focus. You ever hear a song that means something to you, he asks. Jimmy shrugs. Sure. And you stop listening to it, because you've heard it before? Jimmy hesitates. Well, no, but, exactly, Stallone cuts in gently. Because meaning doesn't expire. The audience erupts again. This time louder. More unified. Jimmy shifts in his seat, his fingers tapping lightly against the desk now. Faster than before. Okay, he says, forcing a chuckle. But we're talking about movies here, not life philosophy. Stallone leans back, crossing his arms now. Maybe that's the difference between us, he says. To me, they're the same thing. That line lands like a hammer. The applause is immediate. Jimmy doesn't wait this time. He leans forward quickly, pushing harder. So what, you're saying every sequel, every comeback, every revisit, it's all deeper than we think? I'm saying, Stallone replies, his voice steady, that people don't come back for the story. A pause. They come back for what the story makes them feel. Silence. Then, applause. Stronger than before. Jimmy nods slowly, but his expression has changed now. There's something behind it. Something closer to frustration. All right, he says. Let's talk about something real, then. The tone shifts again. Sharper. More direct. You're a millionaire, he continues. A legend. You've got everything. So when you talk about struggle, isn't that a little outdated? The word hangs there. Outdated. The audience goes still again. Stallone doesn't react immediately. But when he does, it's different. His posture straightens. His voice drops. Struggle doesn't disappear, he says. It evolves. A beat. You think money erases scars, he adds quietly. No one moves. No, he continues. It just makes people assume they were never there. The room feels smaller now. Tighter. Jimmy opens his mouth, then closes it again. For the first time tonight, he doesn't have a comeback ready. The silence stretches. And in that silence, the balance of power becomes undeniable. Stallone isn't reacting anymore. He's leading. Jimmy finally exhales, forcing a laugh again, but it's hollow. Well. I didn't realize we booked a philosophy major tonight. A weak attempt. A retreat disguised as humor. Stallone smiles slightly. Funny, he says. I thought we booked a host. The audience explodes. Louder than ever. Some people even stand. Not all. But enough. Jimmy looks out at them, blinking, caught between a grin and something else, something closer to disbelief. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He turns back to Stallone, his voice quieter now. Let me ask you something, he says. And be honest. Stallone nods. You think I'm disrespecting you? The question hangs there. Real. Unscripted. Stallone doesn't answer right away. He studies Jimmy for a moment, as if weighing not just the question, but the man asking it. Then he leans forward one last time. You tell me, he says. And just like that, the room falls completely silent. No laughter. No applause. Just tension. Pure and unfiltered. Jimmy looks at him, searching for something, an out, a joke, a reset. But there isn't one. Not this time. The camera slowly zooms in. The lights feel hotter. The air heavier. Because now, there's nowhere left to hide. And as Jimmy glances briefly toward the camera, for the first time all night, he looks unsure. Silence. Not the kind that fills gaps, but the kind that exposes them. The studio, once alive with laughter and rhythm, now feels suspended in time. Even the lights seem harsher, brighter than before, casting sharper edges across faces that are no longer relaxed. The audience sits still, their earlier excitement replaced with something heavier, anticipation, tension, and a quiet realization that they are witnessing something unscripted. Something real. Jimmy Kimmel shifts in his chair, his fingers brushing against the edge of his desk. The polished wood reflects the studio lights, but there's no warmth left in the moment. His usual composure is cracking, not dramatically, not visibly to everyone, but enough. Enough for those watching closely. He clears his throat, forcing a breath through a tight smile. Well, he says, his voice just slightly off its usual rhythm, this took a turn. A few nervous chuckles flicker through the audience, but they fade quickly. Across from him, Sylvester Stallone doesn't move. He doesn't need to. There's a stillness about him now, not passive, but resolved. The kind of stillness that comes after a decision has already been made. Jimmy leans forward again, trying one last time to pull the moment back into familiar territory. So, Sly, he begins, tapping his cue card lightly as if grounding himself, what's next for you? A beat. Another sequel. Maybe a line of anti-aging supplements, he adds with a smirk. Or a reality show, keeping up with the comebacks. This time, the laughter is almost non-existent. Just a few scattered reactions, hesitant, unsure. Because now, everyone feels it. The line has already been crossed. Stallone exhales slowly. Not in frustration. In clarity. You know, he says, his voice calm but carrying across the entire studio, it's funny. He shifts forward slightly, his hands resting on his knees. You sit in that chair, he continues, nodding toward Jimmy, and you poke fun like it's armor. The words land softly. But they cut deep. Jimmy's smile fades just a fraction. But at some point, Stallone adds, the jokes stop being clever, and start becoming noise. The audience reacts, quietly at first, then stronger. Applause builds, not explosive, but steady, intentional. Jimmy chuckles under his breath, shaking his head slightly. It's just TV, man, he says. You know that. Stallone's eyes don't leave him. Maybe that's the problem. A pause. You treat everything like it's disposable, even the people who came here with something worth saying. The air tightens again. There's no music. No movement. Just truth sitting in the middle of the room, impossible to ignore. Jimmy leans back, crossing his arms now, a subtle shift into defense. Don't be so sensitive, he says, attempting a casual tone that doesn't quite land. You've taken real punches. Surely you can handle a few words. And that's when it happens. Stallone moves. Slowly. Deliberately. He stands. The chair shifts slightly behind him with a soft scrape against the floor, barely audible, but in this silence, it might as well be thunder. The audience gasps. Not loudly. But enough. Jimmy's posture changes instantly, caught off guard. "Hey, where are you going?" he asks, half standing himself, unsure whether to stop him or follow the moment. Stallone looks at him. Then past him. Toward the audience. "I've taken enough," he says. The words are calm. Measured. Final. "And I've given enough, to this industry, to this audience, to the idea of what storytelling is supposed to be." No one interrupts. No one moves. Jimmy stands now fully, his hands slightly raised as if trying to manage something that's already out of his control. "Come on, we're not done," he says quickly, a hint of urgency slipping through. Stallone turns back to him. And for a brief moment, there's no tension in his face. Just certainty. "But I am." The room holds its breath. And then, applause. Not hesitant. Not polite. Powerful. It rises from the audience in waves, growing louder with each passing second. Some people stand. Others follow. The sound builds until it fills every corner of the studio. It's not just support. It's recognition. Jimmy forces a laugh, trying to ride over the moment. "Don't worry, folks," he says, glancing toward the camera. "Next week we'll have someone with a sense of humor." A few weak laughs respond. But they don't matter. Because Stallone has already turned away. He takes a step toward the edge of the stage, then pauses. The applause continues. Louder now. Stronger. He turns back one last time. Not to Jimmy. To the room. "To be honest," he says slowly, his voice cutting clean through the noise, "next week, try having someone with a soul." The reaction is instant. A mixture of shock, cheers, and something deeper, something closer to respect. Jimmy freezes. Just for a second. But it's enough. Stallone doesn't wait. He walks off. No rush. No anger. Just purpose. The camera tries to follow him, but the movement is clumsy, uncertain. For a brief second, the frame loses him completely before snapping back to Jimmy, who stands alone now in the spotlight. Blinking. Thinking. Searching. But there's nothing to say. Nothing that can bring the moment back. Backstage, the energy is completely different. Crew members line the corridor, some stepping aside, others standing still as Stallone walks past. A few clap quietly. One nods with a look of admiration. Another, young, nervous, leans slightly forward and whispers, "Thank you." Stallone doesn't stop. But he hears it. And for the first time that night, he smiles. Back in the studio, Jimmy slowly lowers himself into his chair. The applause has faded now, replaced with a strange, hollow quiet. He looks toward the camera. For a moment, he considers speaking. Then doesn't. The screen cuts abruptly to commercial. But the moment doesn't end there. Because outside that studio, it explodes. Clips flood the internet within minutes. Social media ignites with reactions, some shocked, some divided, but most, aligned. A single frame dominates the conversation, Stallone standing tall under the stage lights, calm in the face of ridicule. The caption reads, "Strength isn't loud. It's dignified." And it spreads. Faster than anything that came before it. Commentators dissect every word. Fans replay every second. Celebrities weigh in. Some call it uncomfortable. Others call it necessary. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: it was real. What began as just another late-night interview became something else entirely. A moment where humor crossed into something sharper, and was met with something stronger. Not anger. Not outrage. Respect. Stallone didn't shout. He didn't lose control. He didn't fight back the way people expected. He simply stood his ground. And then walked away. On his terms. Because sometimes, the loudest statement isn't what you say. It's what you refuse to accept. The stage lights fade. The echoes of applause disappear. But the moment lingers. Long after the cameras stop rolling. And now the question isn't just what happened. It's what it meant. Who was right? Who went too far? And what does respect really look like, when the spotlight is on? If you felt that moment, if you saw the shift, if you believe some lines shouldn't be crossed, make sure you hit like. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for more stories that pull back the curtain on moments the world can't stop talking about. Because sometimes, the real show begins when the script falls apart.